Hi guys, let's go watching. Just before that, subscribe and enjoy yourself. It's evening. The sky is covered with orange and red hues. A dark-haired, exhausted man, covered in blood, crawls through the forest. His carriage was destroyed to the ground. An unidentified, gorgeous woman wearing red boots and a red long dress approaches the man. He was covered in blood and was pushing himself when he noticed an unknown lady who asked him to save her. She can understand what has happened and where she is. She extends her hand to him. A gorgeous woman asks a man if he wants to live. She says that if he really wants to, he has to promise her something. He will have to protect this woman's sister and keep her safe. The name of this sister is Alicia Valentine. She is the protagonist of a dramatic novel. She does not want her sister's fate to be similar to hers. A few days before, this gorgeous woman wakes up in the moment to realize the situation is changing. She has a question, according to the fact that she does not know what happened. It does not recognize the ceiling, walls, or people. It all seems unfamiliar to her. An elderly woman was hitting a girl with long yellow hair, Alicia, on the arms. This situation is very strange and interesting for the heroine. It makes you realize the situation. She was already dead. But her clothes are intact, and there is no blood on them either. It all seems strange to her. She is sure that she was definitely stabbed. But she instantly realized that she had been reborn into a new novel. But everything became clear. The heroine's guesses were provoked by the fact that she was being reborn in a novel for the 4th time. She was tired of it. She woke up from her thoughts and noticed the wounds on her arms. Because there were 2 people standing in front of her, and one of them was beating the other, she realized that she was being beaten too. Most likely, the owner of the body in which the heroine is located passed out because she was the first to be beaten. A woman beating a young girl arrogantly asks her to roll up her sleeves. Of course, this is to continue to beat her with greater consequences. The elderly lady grabbed the poor girl's arm and said that real ladies should not scream like the girl did. The woman said that there were only 5 strokes left, and the girl should take the punishment with dignity. Alicia's eyes filled with tears. She is very scared. She apologizes to the woman she hires as a nanny. The main character noticed this. She realized that this nanny was watching the girl and her. This may not be the first such case. The woman, who is a nanny, noticed the heroine's awakening and told her about it. The heroine realizes that she needs to do something. She realizes that she does not own her body, but she cannot do anything about it. The heroine declares that she wants to be punished instead of Alicia. The nanny is genuinely surprised by this statement. The heroine, in fact, simply does not like to see a fragile girl like Alicia being beaten. The woman is confused and asks the heroine if she is ready to be punished. The girl agrees. It doesn't scare her anymore, since she was already stabbed in her previous reincarnation. The heroine cannot watch Alicia suffer and cry. The heroine's name is Rosetta. Alicia tells her that she doesn't need to stand up for her. She should receive her punishment herself. Rosetta wants to finally get it over with, so she asks to continue it on her. The heroine notes that she is Alicia's older sister, although in fact she doubts this because she is not very sure of the authenticity. The nanny approaches Rosetta, grabs her chin, and says that she is such a good sister that it looks very silly. Rosetta looked at the woman with a cold look. The nanny decided that this was enough for today. The nanny says that she hopes that they will not have to punish them anymore. She is very sad to do this to the girls. Rosetta, of course, noticed that the woman was actually enjoying the whole thing. The woman wishes them a good rest and then leaves the room. Rosetta and the nanny look at each other as if there was a flare of contempt between them. Alicia sat down and cried bitterly. The heroine recalls a moment that was very similar to her past life, but she comes to realize that she is no longer Rita. Rita is her name from her past life. It's a little hard for her to get used to the new reality. She recalls that the beginning of her new life is very similar to her previous rebirth. On her way home with a beer, she was suddenly hit by a truck, and when she came to, she noticed that she was not in her own body. It appeared in the body of the novel's protagonist. The heroine turned out to be not at all simple. The protagonist of this novel turned out to be a real bully who was always fighting, but most of the time she pretended to be an ordinary schoolgirl. So the girl who was reborn in her body decided to focus on her studies. But as soon as classes ended, she was dragged into fights, and no one gave her a choice. It was hard for her to cope with this because, unlike the original owner of her body, she does not know how to fight. Every day was terrible. But despite all this, she continued to follow the plot, and perhaps she would return to her world. But a kind of joy came to an end. In this life, the heroine was also hit by a truck. There was no beginning and no end to the girl's wishes. It ended abruptly and painfully. She woke up again, but appeared in the body of another character in the novel. The second novel was about a martial art in a fantasy world. It turned out to be a whole adventure for her. The father of the protagonist, the main owner of the body, was Shinmu, and her siblings were fairies. She could masterfully wield a sword, accumulate inner strength, and fight with the help of ki. Every day was like the last for her. Her second rebirth was worse than her first. She didn't know how to use her kai sword. The enemies fought to the death, taking advantage of her favorite mistakes. In this world, death was waiting for her anywhere. But the girl was not going to give up. She tried and tried to get to the end. She wanted to try to survive. She trained hard and overcame her fear to become worthy of the title of the original owner of the body and the main character of this novel. At first, the girl could not even lift a sword, but soon she was able to dominate everything and use different things as weapons. It was something that was really necessary for her. But there was a fatal accident, which the heroine considers to be a very stupid and senseless incident. When her enemies blocked her inner strength and attacked her from behind, she tripped over a rock and smashed her head to death. After that, there were 3 rebirths. Her rebirth was the most terrible villain of the novel, a pathetic heroine of a bestseller with the same name as in her real life. Her name was Rita Bernardo. A man with red hair hugged the girl from behind and assured her that Rita would not be able to run away from him all the time, because she is his darkness. It was a dream about the heroine's 3rd rebirth. She woke up frightened by this. She assures herself that she is not Rita anymore. She needs to stop thinking about it. She went to the window and touched the glass with her hand. She needs to forget everything. She notices that it has been a long time since she has been in such a bright sun that she sees through the window. The girl recalls that in her 3rd rebirth she was imprisoned forever. She didn't know what day it was or what time it was. This turned out to be its worst rebirth ever. In the end, she died defending the protagonist. It turned out to be the man with red hair from her dream. This man was obsessed with her and was a real hypocrite. When a sword was pointed at her husband, she ducked under it, and because of that, she died. She didn't really want to die for him, and she didn't have Stockholm Syndrome or anything else. She just wanted to see deep despair on his face before he died. The girl really hoped that all her rebirths would end, but over time she lost her desire to live, and for the first time she wanted to die on her own terms. The heroine, now reborn as Rosetta, realizes that perhaps God hates her. It was reborn again, but all these thoughts were interrupted by the girl's attention to the flower garden. In fact, she knows the plots of these novels, as she read them all in her real life. As soon as it is reborn, the information seems to float to the surface. The girl thinks that the novel she is in now is the one she read in high school. The first life was a web novel. The second is the world of martial arts. She does not want to remember her 3rd life. And the 4th is called Flowers Don't Cry. Alicia Valentine is the main character, and Rosetta is her half-sister. Rosetta is the one everyone looks up to. At first, Rosetta was jealous of Alicia and mocked her, but in the end, the thief was killed by the protagonist. In her 4th life, she was unlucky again. She believes that now she is a thief who is going to meet her own death. But now she is not the main character, and she has no special mission here. If she does no evil here, she will be able to take a break from the cruel reality. But she is still concerned about something. He had only 4 rebirths, and if we include his real life, this is already the 5th rebirth. She now clearly realizes that there are taboo things. Do not abuse children, do not let yourself be offended, and get rid of unnecessary baggage. She's not going to take abuse every day. The nanny's name is Katie. It is the cause of all the problems. While Rosetta was thinking about how to solve this problem, she noticed Alicia. Now Rosetta is her older half-sister. Alicia is the main character of this world. Alicia noticed her sister, who looked at her in confusion. She greeted Rosetta quite formally, which surprised her. The heroine notes that the real Rosetta should not have done anything bad to Alicia. Although the owner of the body envied her from the very beginning, she always ignored her younger sister. In response, Rosetta also said hello. Alicia was somehow surprised and suddenly ashamed. She handed Rosetta 3 roses to thank her for saving her from the ultimate beating. Rosetta responds by asking what she is thanking her for. Alicia replies, ashamed, that it was for her kindness and her salvation, and for the fact that Rosetta then gave her her handkerchief. But Rosetta wasn't beaten, and she was ready to take a hit. She gave me a handkerchief before she left in silence. Alicia was crying hard, and Rosetta's heart was breaking. She wonders if this is why she was so grateful to her. Rosetta told Alicia that it was all just a trifle, but in return, Alicia thanks Rosetta anyway. The younger sister said she picked these flowers to thank the older one, but Rosetta notices that no matter what she thinks, the heroines are usually very kind, and it is better not to deny their intentions. Rosetta looked at the flowers and said they were very beautiful. She thanked me. Alicia lit up with joy and said that she was really happy. Rosetta noticed that the main character's smile reminded her of something. It turned out that in her third life, she smiled the way Alicia smiles. Alicia says that she finds the summer flowers very pretty, but she thinks that Rosetta might not like them. That's why she decided to pick them. But Rosetta can't remember anything. She can only remember a crying face, a face of anger, a desire to destroy the whole world, and give up. She has been through this thorny path, so she believes that Alicia is in for it. Instantly, Rosetta said something. Alicia asked what had happened. Without hesitation, she told Alicia that she was very beautiful. But Alicia immediately denies her words, saying that Rosetta is much prettier and that she herself is unlike anyone else. Rosetta has only one thought in her head. Alicia is pathetic. Rosetta is overwhelmed with compassion, perhaps because she sees herself in it. Frightened, Alicia sees a man in front of her whom she cannot recognize. He holds a stick in his hands, and Alicia is very afraid of something. Instantly, she sees the nanny in front of her, swinging at her to hit her. She was shaken and scared. Her eyes are filled with fear. A young man appears in front of her and asks her what happened. Alicia, clinging to him, begins to cry, saying that she is very sorry. She repeats the word nanny because it is a sign of her fear. The man hugged her and smiled a sly smile. He said she didn't have to apologize. The man's name is Leo. Rosetta has a dream. Alicia's words reminded Leo of another criminal who had died recently. She was the nanny of 2 of the Duke's heirs, who tormented her family for a long time. As they say, the truth about this was revealed, and she was punished. But her punishment did not help Alicia to get over the trauma that the woman had inflicted on her. Leo began to take advantage of this and began to manipulate her. There is a scene where Leo hugs Alicia, telling her that he is there for her and that everything will be fine. This is the scene when the young man used Alicia's fear to his advantage. He was able to completely win her heart. Rosetta thinks that if she had to choose which scene was the most disgusting for her, it was this one. Now she sees it in person. She wonders why she is dreaming about this hateful moment. Alicia repeats that she is very sorry. Rosetta decided to stroke Alicia's head to calm her down. She looked at Rosetta, raised her head, and said she didn't want to live like that anymore. The morning came. Rosetta, holding her head, woke up from this dream. She is angry about it. Rosetta believes that compassion is a very strange and scary feeling. When you feel genuine pity for someone, we don't see ourselves wanting to help them at any cost, even if it causes great harm. Rosetta, holding a cup of tea in her hands, feels that she has become a little sensitive because of this dream. She realizes that she must not allow Alicia's fear to develop further. Alicia sits in front of her, also drinking tea. Rosetta is sure that if she always hangs out with the main character, she may forget about a quiet life. To prevent any moments of the book from affecting her, you need to distance yourself from it as much as possible. While drinking tea, she was called out by a nanny standing behind her. She holds the stick she uses to beat Alicia and tells her that she shouldn't make any noise while she drinks her tea. Frightened, Alicia apologized to the nanny. Rosetta noticed that she didn't make any sounds. As she set the cup down, she heard a major sound. Alicia was very scared because she knew that she would be punished for this. The nanny stands with her back to her and slaps her arm with a crying hand, showing that Alicia will soon receive her punishment. The woman orders Alicia to get up. She apologizes and says it won't happen again. She knows that she will be punished now. Alicia is shaking in fright. The nanny grabs her hand and says that Alicia is to blame for this. Zika says that she needs to punish the girl so that this does not happen again. She asks if she is right. Alicia, with no other choice and out of fear, agrees with her. The poor girl held out her 2 hands, waiting for punishment. Rosetta feels a strange sensation in her heart. Rosetta recalls words from a dream where Alicia said she didn't want to live like this anymore. The older sister deliberately breaks the cup of tea, showing her presence and drawing the attention of the others. She gets up from her seat and asks the woman threateningly if she wants to say something to her. The woman obviously did not like this behavior at all. She approached the older woman angry and took her by the chin. She asks her threateningly how she dares to tease her like that. The girl is not afraid of this woman, so she smiles confidently and takes the nanny by the wrist. The girl gives off a very bad aura that scares the woman. Rosetta squeezes the woman's hand so hard that she is in a very frightened state. The nanny doesn't understand where Rosetta's strength comes from. The woman believes that she should be the one who is strong, and girls should be victims. This should be obvious to everyone. She raised them from the age of 6 and did everything she could to make them afraid of her. She believes that all 13 years of effort should not go to waste for something like this. The woman is frightened and imagines that a big eagle is hunting a small mouse, and the mouse is a woman. The nanny, screaming, asks me to let go of her hand. With her free hand, she hits Rosetta in the face, and she screams again to let her go. A red mark remains on the girl's face from the blow. She finally decides to let go of the woman's hand. The woman falls when she lets go of her hand. Rosetta says for the woman that she asked to let go of her hand. Rosetta asks if she is okay, and the woman makes a frightened face. The girl notices the stick that the nanny usually uses to beat Alicia and her on the arms, and she steps on it, breaking it. Rosetta walks to the door, takes the handle, and opens it. She asks Alicia, who was present the whole time, if she is going to stay in the room. Alicia does not understand whether she can really leave. In 19 years, she has never left without her nanny's consent. She notices a woman sitting on the floor, still in shock from all this. She notices Rosetta leaving the room and decides to open the door. She can now open the door herself and leave. The air on the other side seems very fresh to her. She looks for Rosetta as she leaves the room. She is heading somewhere. Rosetta flies in her thoughts. She thinks it was a half-hearted mistake because she knows Katie's character. Katie is like a slippery snake who thinks she's a saint. It had to be put in its place. But there is a problem. Sooner or later, the woman will want revenge. The best thing to do is to deal with it once and for all with a single but very deliberate and careful stroke. Today, Rosetta not only helped Alicia, but also pissed off the nanny. She was able to learn something else about herself. She felt a powerful force in her hands. The girl guessed what the reason for this might be. Rosetta was distracted from her thoughts by Alicia. Rosetta asks if her sister can return to her room, but Alicia said they both needed to talk. Rosetta does not like this idea very much, as these events have made them very tired, and Alicia would be better off just resting. But the older sister's mind is a little relieved that at least now Alicia is not crying. But suddenly, Alicia Guerrero asked Rosetta to never do that again. Rosetta is very surprised by her words. At this time, Nanny Katie is struggling to understand the situation that has recently occurred. She does not understand how Rosetta dared to do this. Katie recalls that Rosetta was always in fear of her, and she does not understand how a girl like that could scare her. The woman decides that she will definitely take revenge on Rosetta. According to Alicia, Rosetta thinks that she didn't want to do it herself. She doesn't want to become her protector or her real sister. Rosetta just felt sorry for her at one point, and she couldn't stop herself, so she went for it. Rosetta believes that it all happened because of Alicia, through her tears, through her obedience. But Alicia dispelled all these thoughts by saying that because of all this, Rosetta now has a scratch. Rosetta almost didn't expect to hear this. Alicia continued that she knew she wanted to help her, but that she was the reason Rosetta was injured. The older one is a little confused by these words because she does not understand why Alicia is crying so bitterly about this. She knew that Alicia was very gentle at heart, but to be so... Rosetta touched Alicia's face and told her that she was a crybaby. Rosetta continued that she should not be afraid. A maid named Marie will treat the wound, so the little sister doesn't have to keep crying. When Rosetta finished, she turned away and started walking away. But Alicia stopped her because she didn't want her to leave her. Alicia invited Rosetta to have dinner with her. Rosetta did not expect it, but she agreed to the offer. While the two girls were talking to each other in relief, they were interrupted by a young man who looked very much like Rosetta. Alicia rushed to her brother. His name is Damien Valentine. He is the younger Duke of Valentine. Rosetta fell into a bit of despair because Alicia had so easily thrown herself into her brother's arms and so easily let go of her hand. Alicia told Damien that they hadn't seen each other for so long and asked if he had finished his business in the north. He shook his head to indicate that he hadn't finished anything yet. Alicia was a little upset that Damien was leaving so soon. She asks him to be careful. Damien Valentine is Alicia's brother and Rosetta's half-brother. If you look at their eye and hair color, you might think that they are related to each other. But no matter how similar they are, they will never be a real family to each other. Because for Damien, she is not a dear person, but the daughter of his worst enemy, who is responsible for his mother's death. Rosetta realizes that no matter how unpleasant it is to be in Damien's company, she needs to at least congratulate him on his arrival, since he has been away for a very long time. Rosetta asked him how he was doing. He replied that he was fine. Damien planned to ask her how she was, but he noticed something on her face. Rosetta is interested in his gaze, so she asks herself if she has something on her face. But she remembered that there was a scar on her face. He asked her what was wrong with her face, but she said that everything was fine and he didn't need to worry. Rosetta thinks it would be very bad if he thought it was intentional. The last time Damien was present, Rosetta was scolded for dismissing the servants, but it was obvious that this was Katie's plan. This woman decided to frame Rosetta, so she squeezed the tears from her eyes and knelt down, apologizing for Rosetta's bad behavior. She wanted to destroy Rosetta's reputation and make herself look innocent. That is why Rosetta does not want any misunderstandings. Damien told her to be careful. There was silence and silence between them all. Rosetta decided not to make the situation more tense, so she turned around and said she was going to her room. Alicia didn't want Rosetta to leave, but she gave her the opportunity to leave. Damien and Alicia were left alone. When Rosetta got to her room, she lay down on the bed. All this made her very tired. She was upset that she couldn't have dinner with Alicia, but she would rather spend time with her brother, since they hadn't seen each other for a long time. If she had stayed with them, the dinner would have turned out very strange. There was no hostility, only inconvenience. Perhaps it would be anger or guilt. Although Damien's feelings for her are much more complicated, and it is very difficult to describe what they are. Rosetta is an illegitimate daughter who was not supposed to be born. Her mother was a maid who became a close friend of the Duke's family, and at one point the maid decided to use their trust and poisoned the Duke's drink with drugs. She added sleeping pills to the Duchess's glass, and Herzog is a strong hallucinogen, and so she was able to cloud his mind and pretend to be a duchess. So after a night with him, she immediately fled the estate. She hid the whole truth for many years. And years passed, and Alicia turned 4 years old. This maid suddenly showed up at the duchy. She was holding little Rosetta in her arms, a girl with silver hair and golden eyes who looked so much like Herzog. The previous maid immediately declared that she wanted to become the Duke's second wife. They invited a woman to the estate to burn these things. The maid wanted to put pressure on the kindness of the Duke and Duchess and hoped that they would forgive her for having this child. But Herzog did not approve of all this, and he became aggressive and angry. He grabbed the sword he always carries with him and swung at the traitor. He killed her. Fortunately, Rosetta did not suffer the fate of her mother, and this is all due to the kindness of the Duchess, who noted that the child could not be guilty of anything. She hugged Rosetta, who was very frightened by these events. The Duchess decided to enroll Rosetta in the inheritance, so the Duke had no choice but to include her in the family tree. And when the curtains in the Duke's house ran out, the Duchess fell ill with a severe fever. Alicia's birth weakened the Duchess's body. The betrayal of a close friend and the unexpected appearance of her illegitimate daughter brought her to a critical state. On Alicia and Rosetta's 6th birthday, the Duchess said that all her children should be under the Duke's care. The woman died, and all her children and husband fell into bitter despair while Rosetta stood behind her and watched. After the Duchess's death, Damien and Rosetta's relationship became very strange. Damien knew that children could not be to blame for anything, so he tried to accept Rosetta as his sister. But understanding something with your head and feeling it with your heart are two different things. Alicia was too young to understand the situation. When the Duke and Damien saw Rosetta, they recalled all the bitter and unpleasant events that were associated with the maid. And in order to avoid Rosetta, they immersed themselves in their work. They were afraid of these memories. They blamed Rosetta for everything that happened. That's why they were so busy with work that it distracted them from everything. But with all this, they brought Alicia a lot of suffering. Her brother and father were almost never at home, so she was always alone. The girls were under Katie's care. She told them not to tell anyone about what was happening in the room and what she was doing to them. She told them that ladies should be punished for their mistakes, so adults should not know about anything. They were abused since childhood. Their psyche was destroyed from birth. This had a great effect on Alicia, who was separated from her family. Rosetta doesn't know what Damien has been doing all this time, but she understands why he is behaving this way. She knows that she is the daughter of the person who drove her mother to death. But he promised to take care of her and accept her as part of the family. But he wants to leave everything as it is. Rosetta is exhausted by all these thoughts and has a lot to think about, so she won't be able to sleep. She needs to come up with a plan to get rid of Katie while Damien is still at the mansion. Only Damien and the Duke can expel her, so Rosetta should not miss this opportunity. She has one more thing to think about. This is the power she felt. Rosetta touched her stomach and instantly felt the power within her. It seems very familiar to her, but very distant, and she is much stronger than she thought before. She took a pose that looks like a lotus. She felt the power that runs through her entire body, hidden deep inside. This was the source of the power she was awakening in her 2nd rebirth. Rosetta is a little confused, so it's still happening for the first time. She doesn't know what to do with it next, whether she can use the power here, and why this power exists in her in the 4th rebirth. After death, it is reborn in the body of a new book's Presonar. It keeps all the memories. But no matter how hard she tries, she has to start all over again. If her strength had been preserved, she would not have been as desperate as she was in her 3rd rebirth. Rosetta has been sitting in the same position for a long time. She realizes that her body is weak, so she won't be able to reach her full potential. But now she will be able to stand up for herself. She decides for herself that she will not use force in any case, but that it will be even calmer. Instantly, she feels a very unpleasant feeling, and at that moment, she coughs up blood. She notices that this hasn't happened in a long time. Sometimes it starts to bleed when there is a change in the character's fate, or when there is a big shock. But its power is extremely unstable. She couldn't control herself and used it on Katie. The power allowed her to control Rosetta. That's why Katie was so scared. Rosetta knows what Katie can do, so she decides to come up with a reliable plan. Since she now has a lot of power, she needs to figure out how to control it properly. She doesn't want to accidentally become a brutal killer. She can imagine Alicia's frightened look if that were to happen. To help her, Damien has to get rid of Katie. In Rosetta's ideal plan, Damien needs to see the violence that Katie is committing against them in person. And for this, you need an assistant. The person who will lead Damien at the right time. She already knows who she will involve in her plan. She will ask Marie, who is Rosetta's personal servant and a direct subordinate of Kathy. When the maid came into the room, Rosetta asked her to run a bath. The maid was a little surprised by this particular request. Rosetta asked what was wrong with her request. Instead, Marie replied that she would do what she asked. When the maid found herself in the bathroom, she reflected on the fact that Rosetta had never taken a bath after Katie's lessons, so she did not expect this. At this time, Rosetta entered the bathroom and called the maid by name. She asked Marie to help her wash. The maid was a little confused and asked her lady again. Rosetta replied that she was about to make her debut, so she thought she could receive the same treatments as the other nobles. Rosetta, thinking of something, asks Marie if she thinks the same way. In response, the maid, of course, said that she thought so too, but Marie doesn't want to do it for some reason. If she helps Rosetta, she will see all the scars on her body. Then she will have no choice but to report to Herzog or Damien. And Katie will be punished along with Marie, who helped her for 7 years. And if it doesn't, she'll get it from Katie for snitching. After some thought, Marie told Rosetta that Katie had told her that she shouldn't do this for now. She will ask for permission and help Rosetta next time. Rosetta looked at the maid with suspicion. She said that she accepted such circumstances. Marie was a bit relieved by this and said that it was better not to do anything without Katie's permission. She continued that they needed to postpone it for later, but at this time Rosetta began to undress in front of Marie. The shocked maid is bewildered by her mistress's behavior, so she asks in confusion what has come over Rosetta. Rosetta takes Marie's wrist and tells her to look at her carefully. Rosetta's hands are covered with scars from being hit with Katie's stick. Rosetta points out to Marie that all these scars are the girl's fault. The young lady says with conviction that she cannot be deceived for so long. Rosetta, with a menacing aura, asks the shocked maid how much Katie pays her for such services. Most likely a lot, if she is willing to risk her life. Marie realized that her mistress had come here to give her one last chance to save herself. But she realized it too late. Rosetta tells Marie that she has been working as a maid here for 7 years, and she has been watching her for the same amount of time. Rosetta threateningly tells her that all these scars have appeared in the last 7 years, and that her greed and concealment of the truth are Marie's fault. The young lady loses her temper. She stops controlling herself. She took Marie by the throat and asked her if she was proud of herself. In response, crying, the maid asks for mercy. She is sure that she will die soon. Rosetta has squeezed Marie's throat so tightly that she can no longer breathe, and she asks Rosetta to stop it and forgive her for everything. With a frightening look, Rosetta asks what she will get in return if she lets go of her throat. Marie said she would do whatever her mistress told her to do. Rosetta let go of her throat, took her by the shoulder, and told her that it was Valentine's family who would decide her fate, not Katie. It was raining outside. Rosetta is standing in front of a window, and her maid Marie is standing next to her. Marie asks Rosetta if everything is going to be okay. In response, Rosetta said that everything would go well, otherwise she would not have done all this. Marie apologized for her words. Rosetta believes that today Marie will betray the woman she has worked for 7 long years, which is why Marie is so careful with her new mistress, Rosetta. But Rosetta stopped thinking about it because it was not her problem, and Marie should have thought about her actions much earlier. After a while, Rosetta came to visit Alicia to check on her. Alicia was very excited about the visit. The blonde asked if there was a special reason. Rosetta said she came for nothing. Rosetta noticed that before Katie's class, Alicia was always very lonely. She had to deal with the anxiety herself, and she constantly wonders what will happen next. And the excitement reaches a point where she can't even breathe without a sip of tea. Rosetta asks Alicia if she is afraid of the dark. The second replies that she is a little afraid. Rosetta asks her again if she is so afraid of the dark that when she thinks about it, she immediately becomes very scared. But Alicia said she was not that afraid of it. The older sister walks over to Alicia's wardrobe and opens its door. Alicia asked if she wanted to borrow her dress. Rosetta replied that yes, she did need one. Alicia happily goes to look for a dress for her sister and asks her which color she likes best. Alicia really glows with happiness, but Rosetta knows that she doesn't really need it, and she just goes ahead with her plan. She closed the door of the wardrobe where Alicia was staying. The girl is not very happy about it. She tries to open them, not understanding why she did it. She starts screaming and asking for the door to be opened, but Rosetta says she will open it only when the lesson is over. She asks Alicia to sit quietly. Alicia doesn't want that, so she yells at her to open the door. At this time, Rosetta ties the door handles with laces. Alicia screams and cries. Rosetta acted very cruelly, but it was all in order to solve one problem once and for all. But Alicia remembered all the good moments when Rosetta stood up for her. That's why she's pretty sure her sister is up to something. Katie's class will start in 10 minutes. As she leaves, Rosetta thinks that the relationship between her and Alicia will be severely damaged. In the real story, when they found out about the abuse of Alicia, the Duke and Damien immediately returned to the estate and realized that the girl was suffering terribly because of their absence. They then promised that they would never allow this to happen again. And when they stayed in the estate, Alicia's condition improved. As soon as the family began to take care of her, she began to take care of others. But Rosetta remained forgotten by everyone. Rosetta decides that she will distance herself from the protagonist as she wanted, and he will live quietly in solitude. She asks the maid if she has memorized everything. In response, Marie agrees. They are ready to solve the main problem. Katie is on her way to Alicia's room. She decides that she will never make a fool of herself again. She abruptly bursts into the room, very angry. She sees a person she did not expect to see. Rosetta was sitting on the couch, drinking tea, waiting for Katie. Rosetta teasingly greets Katie. Katie is a little tense, wondering why Rosetta is here. She asks where Lady Alicia is. Rosetta replies that she has become ill, so she will not come. Katie said she didn't know Alicia was sick. With a sly smile, Rosetta says that now the woman knows why Alicia is missing. Katie suspected something. She got angry and clutched the stick tightly in her hands. Katie confidently emphasizes that Rosetta would not have planned it. Her resistance is useless. No matter how much she wants to help Alicia, she will never become a real family. Rosetta did not react to this, but simply smiled, thinking about something. She knows that the real Rosetta would have already burst into tears in her place. But to Katie's dismay, she is not seeing the real Rosetta, and the one who doesn't remember her real name. Rosetta confirmed Katie's words that she could never be real. She asked if she thought she was better than her. The lady says she can take Katie with her if she doesn't believe. Recently, she says, she's already accomplished a lot. She is sure that she will simply be kicked out, and Katie will be left to rot for abusing the real Valentine. At these words, Katie became very angry and hit Rosetta on the cheek. She begins to scream and assure Rosetta that she cannot dare to threaten her. Rosetta exhales and asks the woman why she is hitting her in places that are in plain sight. She asks if he thinks about the consequences. The woman goes a little crazy because she is not used to receiving such resistance. She begins to assure Rosetta that all this concerns only Alicia and that no one needs Rosetta. That Rosetta walks around with a scratch on her face, but no one notices. She actively begins to assure her that no one needs Rosetta, that no one cares about her, and that she should know her place. The woman does not calm down and starts shouting that no one will want Rosetta, and no matter how good a sister she is, she will remain a dirty half-breed. Rosetta didn't even blink and said she would check it out. She knocked the cup of tea to the floor, breaking it in front of Katie's feet. She screamed in response. Rosetta sat down and took the shard of the cup in her hand. She asked if she did this, would anyone really care? She squeezed it hard in her hand, and blood poured out of the girl's fragile arm. Shocked, the woman who sees this action cannot say or do anything. She asks Rosetta what she is doing and what she is up to. Decina hears footsteps outside the door. Here comes the young Duke Damien. Rosé realizes that everything is going according to plan. The woman started shaking. She said in shock that the girl had gone crazy. Damien bursts into the room where Rosetta and Katie are. He notes that he was told how Rosetta closed Alicia. He noticed what was happening in the room. He noticed that Rosetta's hands were covered in blood. She picks up the pieces of the cup. Rosetta abruptly changes her expression and behavior, portraying herself as a victim of this. The young Duke is very angry and demands an explanation from Katie. Damien started shouting at her until the woman could not gather her thoughts and say anything. Katie instantly realizes that it was all planned against her. She realizes that Rosetta is making it look like the woman told her to, so she starts picking up the pieces. She realizes that all 13 years can be wasted, but a woman does not want to give up so easily, because she realizes that if she gives up, it will be tantamount to death. The woman begins to explain that it is actually a misunderstanding and he needs to listen to her. The woman, falling to her knees, began to scream and say that she too had learned that Rosetta had locked Alicia away somewhere. She adds that she told her that envy is envy, but you can't do that to your sister. She tells the prince that he believed her and that Rosetta did not listen to her at all and did everything to set her up. Rosetta was surprised to hear such statements from the woman. The woman starts crying bitterly and explains that it was Rosetta who broke the cup and threatened to cut her. According to the woman, Rosetta did not listen to her when Katie wanted to stop her. Rosetta thinks it all sounds very plausible. In Damien's eyes, it is Katie who has authority, and Rosetta is just a problem. This is not the first time this has happened, and Katie has chosen a very good course of action. We can only wait for his decision. He needs to believe his eyes or believe Katie. Damien is completely confused. Damien is about to ask Rosetta something, but the door to the room suddenly opens. Alicia burst into the room. No one expected her to come here. Rosetta is very interested in how Alicia managed to get out and what she is doing here. The younger sister threw herself into Rosetta's arms. They both fell on the couch. The girl clung tightly to Rosetta. Alicia wanted to say something to Rosetta, but she was interrupted by Katie. The woman began to play the role of a kind nanny, asking if she was okay. She turns to her, saying that everything will be fine now and she will be with her. She asks Alicia to come over to her. Alicia looked at Rosetta and noticed her hand. She started saying that it was all her fault. Rosetta assures us that it is not her fault. The older sister did not expect this turn of events. Damien came up to them and told her that Katie had told her how she had persuaded Rosetta to let her go, and that Rosetta had threatened the woman. Rosetta thinks that Alicia will not tell the truth. Alicia was subjected to violence and pressure from Katie for many years. It's hard for her to even hear the nanny's name, let alone anything else. And Katie understands all this, so she chose this version of the action. Rosetta took Alicia's hand. She asks her not to bend over backwards. Alicia smiled sincerely in response and turned to Damien. Alicia said that it was not what Katie said it was. The girl continued that Katie had been abusing and beating them for years, and that it was the nanny who was the thief. She did not expect Alicia to say all this against her. She continues that her sister just wanted to help her, that Rosetta was innocent of anything, and that Katie had simply been abusing them for years. Alicia notes that she still has scars and can show them. Katie rushed to her side, saying that Alicia was just lying. The woman, in her defense, says that it was not like that at all, and he should believe her. She was interrupted by Alicia, who told the woman that she needed to stop lying. She says she couldn't say all this before because she was too afraid. She wanted to continue, but she suddenly felt sick and fell down. It fell into Rosetta's hands. Rosetta recalls that in the original story, everything was just like that, and that she often fainted because of the stress. Rosetta said everything would be fine. She asked her brother whose side he would choose, or rather whom he would believe. Damien is at a loss. The young Duke chose Rosetta's side, or rather believed her. Katie is taken away to be imprisoned. She screams that she is not guilty at all and asks him to spare her. Afterward, she shouts to Rosetta that she must come to talk to her and that she must tell her something, and if he doesn't, he will regret it. Finally, she was taken out of the room. Rosetta turns away from Damien without saying anything. He took her hand to stop her. He said that she had a wound and that she should wait for a doctor. She replied that it would be better if the doctor just came to her room because she was very tired of it all. She asks him to take care of Alicia, as the recent events have been a real eye-opener for him as well. She turns around and heads for the door to leave the room. He apologizes to her. In her mind, she does not accept his apology because she thinks that it would be better if he apologized properly. But she understands what he means. This touches on her question about who he would believe, but he never answered it. The real Rosetta would not have responded to such an apology. She believes that one should at least sometimes live up to the image of a real body owner. When Rosetta came to her room, she asked her maid what had happened to Alicia. Marie replied that it was actually she who had reported to the young Duke that Rosetta had locked Alicia in an unknown place. And when she returned to Lady Alicia, she threatened to jump out the window if she was not released. She said she would have had no choice. Rosetta, in turn, was surprised by the fact that Alicia had threatened someone. She said Marie was free to go. The maid wanted to tell Rosetta that she needed to change her clothes, but Rosetta said that a doctor would come soon, and then she would change her clothes and give them to another maid. She asks Marie not to follow her. The evening came. Exhausted, Rosetta laid down on the bed. Her hands have already been bandaged. She recalls all the events of today and exhales from how hard it is today. There are a couple of reasons why she decided to stay in Rosetta's body. First of all, she is not the main character, so she does not have to carry a heavy load of such peculiar responsibilities. Although, at first, Rosetta was frightened by the prospect of being a thief, but there should be no problem if it stops following the plot. Secondly, rebirth consists of coincidences and risks. It's like gambling without any restrictions, but in this life of hers, she found herself in the body of a supporting character who has beauty and money, so next time she may not be so lucky. At first, she was just an ordinary schoolgirl, so she quickly got used to the role. But the second and third rebirths were very terrible. But most importantly, she is estranged from her family. It is this fact that pleases the girl the most. As far as she remembers, the real Rosetta hardly ever spoke to her personal maid. There was no one in the estate who was close to her. Surrounded by close friends or siblings, the heroine could never relax being a fake. She had to hide her personal self under another personality because she was surrounded by family or close people for whom she had to play roles. She doesn't know who she really is. Rita, the main character, has long since forgotten about it. She accepted the rules of the game and got used to the role, but no matter what she did, she felt as if something was slipping away from her. She considered herself a fake because she had lost herself and could not become someone else. She tried to become someone that others would love, but it was useless. The heroine's family will never become her family. She is still reflecting on her true self. She was woken from her thoughts by Alicia, who asked her what she was doing here. Alicia says she was worried, so she came to see her. She notes that there was a grumbling coming from the room, so she decided to come in. She said that she knew she was not allowed to enter without permission, but she was very worried. Rosetta is having trouble breathing and is not feeling well. Perhaps the fever started because of the wounds. She tries to get up. Alicia, all confused and frightened, says that she needs to call a doctor, but Rosetta takes her hand and asks her not to leave her side. The girl believes that she lost control of herself because of the high temperature. The fever deprived her of sound thinking, and she still hasn't recovered from that dream. She realizes that she has two personalities in her, Rosetta and Rita. Rosetta asks why Alicia did this. Alicia doesn't really understand the question, so Rosetta asks why Alicia got out of the wardrobe, why she came to her, and why she told the truth about Katie. She told Alicia that she was very weak, crying all the time and even fainting, so she asked why Alicia did it. Alicia explains that Rosetta protected her, and that's why she decided she wanted to protect her too. She was scared, but thanks to Rosetta, she gained courage, and there is no reason to be anymore. At these words, Rosetta began to cry. Alicia panicked, and she confusedly asks Rosetta if she is okay. Alicia in the original story was the same until her soul was broken. She was always a weak crier, always suffering, and never took the initiative. But even being such a person, she mustered up the courage to threaten to jump out the window, all in order to run to her older sister, to come to her and save her. She gave a reason for Rosetta to help her, and Rosetta gave her the courage to help her. She changed a lot, and she broke her cage and broke the shackles in which she was chained. Then Rosetta thought that if someone helped her, if someone pushed her a little bit, she immediately realized when she appeared in the world and saw Alicia, who looked so much like herself. She knew that this would happen, and she would not have been able to just watch the poor woman's ass being abused. She would not have allowed Alicia to go through the hell she went through. She is no longer afraid of suffering and death. She couldn't just look at someone who looked so much like her. Rosetta, hugging the girl tightly, says that she will protect Alicia. She will not be able to bear its failures and losses any longer. Therefore, Alicia is the one she can still save. She told Alicia not to worry, and in her mind she promised Rita that she would save her for sure. She hugs Alicia and decides that she will never let Alicia become the main character again, and this promise is deep in her heart. When Rosetta woke up, she remembered what had happened recently. She felt very ashamed of the situation, and perhaps she acted this way because of her illness. She recalled that she hadn't actually cried in front of other people for a long time. She doesn't want to remember this event anymore. The past cannot be changed, and the future can still be changed. but first, she needs to be cured. When she changed her clothes, Rosetta decided to make a plan to prevent Alicia from becoming the main character. This is a plan that will prevent Alicia from following the path of the false Rosetta. In the original story, Alicia and Leo first met at the Carter family's funeral. It was then that he became interested in her. Over time, Leo began to love her even more with each new meeting. Because of the death of his father, he became a duke at a very young age, and this was one of the reasons for his unhealthy obsession. He didn't hide his sympathy for Alicia. He put a lot of pressure on her, and you can't get rid of that easily. There were two reasons for this. Firstly, Alicia's character, which was very torn and formed in a difficult environment. And secondly, the title of Leo. Duke Valentine, Duke Presia, and Duke Carter are the guardians of magic, God's will, and the sword. They are the three pillars that support the Calm Empire. But at this time, they share equal power and responsibilities. Leo found himself in this union as the Duke of Carter. He was the only one who received his title at such a young age. There is nothing surprising in this union of a princess of one family and a duke of another. But the modest Alicia suddenly rejects the duke's confession. Instead, Leo has always been able to manage her perfectly well with the help of her abilities. The obsession with Alicia, the problems within her family, and the general political instability were factors in making Alicia an obedient puppet. At the end of the novel, Leo wanted to get Alicia at any cost, so he decided to destroy the Valentine family. And at the end of the book, the Valentine family was destroyed, and only Alicia Valentine survived. And he was able to get it forever, and that was the end of it. Rosetta can't even write the beginning of a plan. It all starts at the funeral of the Carter family. Rosetta thinks that maybe Alicia shouldn't go there, but she realizes that it might not help, because they will meet anyway, either at a coming-of-age ceremony or on a hunt. Adult nobles are required to attend social events. Rosetta knows that there is still time before the funeral, so she will be able to come up with something. She came up with the idea that the protagonist's disappearance could be an option. If there is no main character, then the events of the novel will change and will not happen. Perhaps Rosetta should kill Leo. But she decides that this is not necessary. In its current state, it will be difficult to get close to it and kill it. Rosetta knows that there are chances, but the risk is too great. And if she does manage it, she can escape to another world. For Rosetta, this seems to be the best option. Rosetta is sure that the power will remain with her if she dies. Instantly, she remembered that she did have another option. She came up with an idea. We could make sure that someone else gets the title of Duke. Then Leo will be deprived of power and influence, his strongest weapons. Leo has a brother. His name is Cassian Carter. It was at his funeral that the main characters met. He's a supporting character. Leo and Cassian are thieves, but the fate of the second brother was much worse. After Leo Shu didn't kill him, he was able to escape and dreamed of revenge. But at the end of the book, Leo finished what he couldn't do the first time. Cassius's funeral was held when he was actually alive. Although Leo failed in his plan, they buried an empty coffin. And after his real death, there was not even a grave left of him. Leo planned the carriage accident that almost took Cassius's life. He, in turn, had to hide for the rest of his life. Rosetta realizes that in order to meet him, she needs to do so before he starts hiding. She plans to make him an ally. She realizes that he will be impossible to find after the incident. She wants to come up with a plan to plan a meeting with him and how to get him on her side and how to make him a duke. 3 days later, she decides to go to the forest where the incident is supposed to take place. She is riding in a carriage with a coachman and 2 horses. She notices that she hasn't been outside for a long time. In her past life, she had only one thought in her head. She thought as she watched, listened, and felt when it would all end. Now she notices that she feels something new after her long life in captivity. At some point, she realized that she had gotten used to the dampness and darkness in her cell. She wonders how quickly she will get tired of living in luxury. The carriage wheel and the carriage itself bounced a little, so the coachman asked the girl if she was okay. She replied that everything was fine. When asked how much further they had to go, the coachman replied that they would soon be there. Today, Cassius's carriage will go off the cliff. It was getting dark. The view in those parts is extremely beautiful. They have arrived at the place of arrival, and the girl looks around the area, looking for the best spot. She found it. But the coachman called her and said it was best not to stay here for long. The sun will soon set, and it will be very dangerous in the dark, and they need to get to the city. He said that we should have taken at least one night. The girl replied that it would be fine, as no one would dare to attack them when they saw the color of her eyes. The Valentine is a family of warriors who are excellent with the sword, and this does not depend on gender. According to the real Rosetta, she and Alicia were taught fencing at a fairly decent level, although Rosetta may seem weak in appearance. Rosetta told the coachman that she could defend herself. Damien actually wanted to give them a night, but she refused. But it was actually for a different reason. Earlier, the girl, having come up with her plan, decided to go to the young Duke Damien to tell him that she wanted to take a break from her recent lessons, Katie. The reason for refusing to accompany the night was simple. She just didn't need any extra witnesses, and even the fact that she was here had to remain a secret. If he had known why she was coming here, he would have sent a knight to fetch her. She told the coachman that they would not be here for long, and she would just go to watch the sunset and plan to return. She thinks Damien might think she'll be back soon when she walks around the neighborhood a bit. According to the book, 19-year-old Cassian will fall off a cliff with a carriage a week before graduation from the summer academy. The girl arrives at the place she had planned to go to, but notices that the carriage is not there yet, even though the sun has already set. Although she realizes that nothing should be different from the original plot of the novel now, she goes back to the carriage, approaches the coachman from behind, and scares him. He turns, and she instantly hits him in the carotid artery. He falls down and falls asleep. In the original, Cassian and Rosetta were unrelated. Neither of them had any contact with secular society, so they didn't even have the opportunity to meet. The girl, having put the coachman under a tree, goes to the place where the carriage is supposed to crash. They won't be able to negotiate with Cassian unless she wants to see him specifically, and this was precisely the problem. Even if they had met, her suggestion that Cassius become a duke would have sounded extremely strange. Therefore, the heroine decides that this is definitely not an option. Besides, the Carter family can't find out about this, that they are helping him until he becomes a duke. Therefore, she has only one chance. There is no better chance to meet with him without any further announcement and get him to accept its terms than right after the accident. Cassius's carriage is already approaching the place of the cliff. Rosetta noticed that the carriage had already fallen off the cliff and spotted the coachman of the carriage, who had jumped out a second before the fall. He was very scared when he realized that he had killed a man. He actually sent Cassius's carriage into a cliff on purpose because his task was to kill Cassius. He was ordered to do so by the Duchess of Carter and her son Leo. Cassius does not have a liquid mother or money, and he does not even possess the magic inherent in the Carter family. He became the guy who was born into a family that values magic, and he can't use that same power. Even the Duke was ashamed of his son. And even if his own father abandoned him, no one else needs him. And Leo and his mother took advantage of this and constantly abused him. And it all ended with an assassination attempt to ensure that Leo would be the Duke. The coachman still escapes from the murder scene, and the girl uses magic to get down the steep slope, but her body cannot get used to such a powerful force, so blood gushes from Rosetta's mouth. But she noticed some improvements. The girl found the crash site. Cassian came to her and asked for help. She listens to his voice of despair and sees that his fragile shell is about to collapse. Cassian Carter is a thief with a fate that no one would ever want. When the carriage didn't make a sharp turn, the horses roared and the carriage began to skid. At that moment, he saw the coachman looking at him with a frightened look. Then he realized that they had set it all up. He survived. Cassian climbed out of the overturned carriage and could still stand on his feet, but not for long. He fell down and started crawling. He doesn't understand how it could have happened, but he realizes that it was definitely not an accident. They did it all, his stepmother and brother. For hours they threatened his life. His bones were broken countless times. His life was on the line, but no one wanted to help. All the residents of the estate knew what was happening, but they just kept quiet and ignored everything. They seemed to see nothing and hear nothing. Even his own father was the same way. He emphasized to him that if he had power, no one could touch him. For Cassius, his father's voice seemed very harsh, and his gaze was worse than poison. He had heard many curses from others throughout his life, but his father's words were the worst. Worse, Nid has fractures, as if he were thrown into a cold swamp in the middle of winter every time. If it is not needed even by the one who gave it life, then it does not need to exist. Since then, he had to live, constantly be on the lookout, and no one in the estate trusted him. He couldn't just eat in peace because he knew the worst could happen. His life seemed more like survival than living. He could not bear such cruel pain and such cruel loneliness. But even so, he wanted to continue living. It was as if he wanted to tell someone that he could endure anything. Even after the carriage accident, he crawls to live. He is very hurt that it ended up like this. No one will remember its existence. He considers himself very miserable. He remembered his mother, who died right after he was born, so he can't remember anything about her, but he misses her very much. He misses the face he has only seen in portraits. He thinks that if she were alive, maybe at least someone would cry for him. He asks himself whether he will be able to see her if he dies, and whether he will be able to see someone who cares. He raised his head and saw a girl he did not know. Instinctively, out of a desire to live, he tried to crawl to her. When he saw someone, his heart beat faster. He wants to live on, even if his life is a living hell. Rosetta is standing right in front of a poor boy who is asking for help and rescue. She asks him if he wants to live. The girl holds out her hand to him and says that if he really wants to, he has to promise her something. The boy thought that the person standing in front of her was a monster, or perhaps even a human. He had heard it said that there are creatures that mesmerize people and then eat them. And with their beautiful faces, they captivate and take your heart. An unknown girl tells him that she will save him, but in return he will have to fulfill her request. He is interested in the essence of the stranger, but he wants to live, so he doesn't care anymore. He agrees to do anything to get help. He is ready for any help. Even if his heart is taken away or he refuses, he is still waiting for death, and he is ready to give it for salvation. Rosetta asks the boy if he is awake. He shows signs of life. But all that aside, Rosetta wonders what to do with the broken carriage. The girl comes to her coachman and wakes him up. He wakes up abruptly and asks what happened. The man realized that he had dozed off, so he apologized to the girl. She noted that this is not so important. She led him to the crash site where Cassian Carter had crashed. He asks in shock what happened. The girl says that she thinks they were driving too fast and wanted to pass her carriage, but did not fit into the curve. He imagines all this action and enters into an understanding of horror. She asks to check on the guy who is lying down. The man notices that the horses can no longer be helped. He approached the guy and asked him how he was feeling. Cassian showed signs of life, and because of this, the man was very frightened and flew back. Still, he was very lucky. The girl asks how the boy is doing. The coachman replies in confusion that he must still be alive. He asks her what they are going to do about it. She replies that they will take the boy to the carriage and help him. When they got to their carriage, she asked her husband to put the boy down more carefully. Rosetta noticed that the coachman was very sweaty, so she gave him one of the ribbons on her dress. She asks him to keep everything a secret, specifically the events of that day. She says that we shouldn't talk about this guy. The man doesn't understand why Rosetta wants to keep it a secret, but she explains that they are a little to blame for this as well, because they didn't even warn the guy when the horses were running straight into the cliff. She notes that this will not affect her, but the coachman may lose his job. He realized that everything looked like they were just standing on the sidelines and even had to move the carriage out of the way, and the man had fallen asleep. Rosetta adds that many servants will soon be laid off, and she does not want to lose a good coachman like this man. She says she hopes he will be able to work for the Valentine family for a long time to come. She repeated her request, and he finally agreed. The girl told him not to worry, and that she would warn the boyfriend herself. Rosetta repeated to him that he didn't need to tell anyone, and that he should pretend that nothing had happened. It was as if they had just walked around the city and then gone to a hotel, and they hadn't been to any mountains. The man was touched by her kindness. He realized that she hadn't accused him of anything and was even helping him keep his job. He says he will do everything she asks him to do. Rosetta assured him that he sincerely believed her and that he would keep quiet about everything that had happened that evening. It is late afternoon. They successfully arrived in the city. While still in the carriage, Rosetta asks Cassius if he is awake. The guy sleeps soundly. He was very close to death, so it is obvious that he is sleeping. She rewinds his hands and eyes so that no one can see his bright red eyes, which are usually characteristic of the Carter family. She felt the carriage stop and looked out the window. They arrived at the Reddington living room. This is a very luxurious establishment by Duke Valentine. Rosetta gets out of the carriage and is greeted by servants. She notes that a guy is sleeping inside. She instructs them to carefully carry him inside the living room so that no one sees him. She also told them not to remove the bandage from his eyes under any circumstances. The main thing is to do everything unnoticed. When Rosetta arrived at the house, she was approached by an attendant who said that the room on the 5th floor was ready. She adds that no one but her and her companion are allowed to be here, and security will be at the highest level. Rosetta recalls that she knows some of the original story. Leo was looking for an excuse to see Alicia without her knowledge. He decided to stay in the windshield to hide from the heavy rain. He got a VIP room on the 5th floor, and the attendant told him the same thing as Rossetti. She called out to her, and the woman said she was listening. She asks the woman if she has ever seen a comet against a blue moon. The attendant was a little surprised, but then smiled and said that Rosetta probably wanted to enjoy the view. The woman asks whether she should call the stranger in or take Rosetta to her. Rosetta notes that, in fact, this person is already present in the room. She hints that it is the attendant who is this person. The woman says she does not know what she is talking about. Rosetta decided not to continue this topic, so the woman asks again whether to bring the unknown person here or to bring the girl to her. Rosetta asks me to call her in. The attendant pushes aside a large picture of the starry sky and a passage is visible. The woman asks me to wait a bit. Rosetta is sitting on the couch. She thinks that Cassian is already inside, and she wonders if the boy is awake. She decides that after meeting an unknown person, or rather a woman named Blanca, she will visit him. She hears footsteps. This is the woman named Blanca. She is the owner of the living room. The girl noticed that the voice was very different from the attendant's. The woman said that she hoped that her presence would not embarrass her. Madame Blanca is an important character in the book. She is the head of an imperial top-secret organization. With its help, you can get everything you need. Any subject, any knowledge, and even secrets. In the original, Leo often visited her. Blanca treated him in a special way. The reason was that she considered him a very interesting person. Rosetta can't imagine what it is that attracted her to Leo. She is characterized as a gambling person. Rosetta knows that it is very expensive to get interest from Blanca. All future affairs will be tied to her. Rosetta would benefit from Blanca's special treatment. Madame asks the girl why she called her. Rosetta noticed that the woman was obsessed with the color blue. She says she needs help. Blanca notes that as long as it does not threaten her life or someone else's, she will be able to help with whatever is needed. Rosetta says that she is surprised that Blanca is not afraid of death. Madame notes that it would be too boring to die now and she has unfinished business. She asks Rosetta if the girl has had enough tea. Rosetta replies that this tea is very different from what it looks like. Rosetta asks if everything is exactly the same as in the other corners of the living room. Madame interrupts her and says it's time to get down to business. Rosetta says she needs a magical object that can completely change her face. She asks if Blanca can get one of those things. Madame says that she has never heard of such things, and if she hasn't, then they don't exist. Rosetta asks if she is sure of her words. The woman replies that this is exactly what she is most interested in. Blanca says that in return, she can offer to change the color of her eyes and hair. She asks if Rosetta wants to buy. The girl is not sure whether such non-dramatic solutions to the problem will be enough, but she realizes that this can also be useful to deceive the Carter family. She decided that she would use these things when she had to go out. She agrees to buy them. The woman says that she will bring everything soon and asks if Rosetta wants to buy anything else. Of course, the girl wants something else. She emphasizes to Madame that she needs to find someone else. In the basement of the Reddington, a woman who appears to be Madame Blanca laughs out loud and notes that in such boring times there are people like Rosetta. She recalled the situation when Rosetta revealed her identity. Blanca wonders if she really knew about it or if she was just joking for the atmosphere. A man with long, dark green hair approaches her. He asks her if she is having fun now. She says that she is not just having fun, she is actually having a lot of fun. He asks her if the conversation with the princess was really that interesting. The woman tensed up. She did not look at her husband very happily, and he thought he had said the wrong thing. She just blew smoke on him. He coughed heavily, and she warned him to watch his language. She says she told me not to mention any information about their clients. She tells him not to act stupid and notes that she doesn't like stupid people. He apologizes. She emphasized that she was in a good mood now, so she would forgive him, but she asked him to be more careful. She added that time flies very fast and children grow up very quickly. Her servant cannot understand what she is talking about. Blanca asks him what's wrong with the customer's order. He says he has already given it away and it was paid for with jewelry. She wonders if Rosetta was ready in advance, or if it was just a coincidence, or perhaps fate. Rosetta enters the room where Cassian is. She smells blood and medicine, as if she had entered a medical ward. She sat down on the stool next to the bed and looked at him intently. She removed the bandage from his face and thought that his face was very calm. In his dream, he is drowning in the deep ocean. Cassian calls for help, but no one answers, because it is impossible to say a word underwater. He feels as if he is being pulled deeper and deeper. He can't see anything anymore, and he can't breathe. He feels that this could be the end, but someone calls him by name. Someone is calling him incessantly and loudly, and he hears it all. He cannot recognize the voice of the person asking him to wake up. The voice says he made him a promise. Cassian comes from the depths. He woke up instantly and saw a girl sitting in front of him. She greets him. He notices that she has long silver hair, a pale face, and golden eyes. She says her name. She leans closer to him and congratulates him on his survival. He was a little surprised by this statement. He asks himself if there are better words for someone who has deceived fate and been reborn. The girl asks him how he feels. Cassian looked at her with an incredulous look and changed his lying position to a sitting one. He is not amused by this situation. He touched his stomach and felt a pain that made him moan softly. Rosetta asks him what happened to him. She wants to touch him, but he immediately starts screaming that she didn't touch him. Rosetta is a little surprised by his wild behavior. She thinks he looks very strange, and perhaps he is afraid of her. Cassian asks where they are. He notes that by the girl's eyes, he realized that she was from the Valentine family. Rosetta had already realized that he had most likely lost his memory of the incident. She says that she is from the Valentine family and says that his shame is still fine. Cassian asks why he is here. He wonders if she kidnapped him and locked him up here. The girl was a little confused. She asks him how much he remembers and whether he remembers the incident with the carriage. He remembered. Rosetta adds that she was the one who saved him, and he had apparently forgotten that. He cannot believe that this is what happened and that she saved him. The girl thinks that she will need to change her plans. In the original story, Cassian is a very careful and cautious guy. He had to become this way, and he didn't know any better because he has enemies everywhere. But he could have opened his heart to his rescuer when he was on the verge of death, but he forgot everything. Rosetta tells Cassian that it was she who brought him here and tried to cure him. He asks her why she saved and healed him. Rosetta hesitated at first because she didn't know he would ask this question. She replied that she needed him. She says she needs him, and it can be hard to believe. She needs him because she needs a person who will become the Duke instead of Leo. He is sincerely surprised by these words. The girl says that she will make him the new Duke and asks him to become her ally. He says it's impossible. He is very concerned about the fact that she wants him to become a Duke and why Rosetta Valentine is doing all this. He does not understand. He could not even dare to think of becoming a Duke instead of Leo, let alone plan such a thing. He just wants to survive. He wants to survive at all costs. No matter what happens, he must survive. But he has no reason to survive, and he asks himself this question. He never thought about it. He always believed that by the mere fact of his initiation, he could already take revenge on his family. Because it was the only thing he was capable of, and the only thing he could do. But he wonders how long it would have lasted. Why did he think about it all? And did he have to spend his whole life on it? He is interested in whether the idea of becoming a Duke is possible. He thinks it's some kind of trap. He asks if she wants to use it, or she wants to make him a duke to destroy the Carter family. The girl does not understand what he is saying at all. She thinks that he is shouting all this nonsense with a very pitiful face, and she is even a little ashamed of him. Rosetta tells Cassian that he has a very good imagination, but she has a completely different goal. He tells her that she is lying. She is completely baffled by this stupidity. Rosetta tells him that he can imagine whatever he wants, but she still doesn't have to say anything. The girl adds that she needs him, and her goal is to make him the Duke of Carter, and he needs to decide for himself what to do. She gets up from her chair and gets ready to leave. She adds that she will wait for his response until tomorrow, so he should rest and not put pressure on the wounded man. He wants to stop her from leaving. She says that she will come back at dawn, and it will be better for him if he thinks it over, and asks him not to take it all as something bad. He asks her not to leave, but she closes the door and says goodnight. He is embarrassed by what he is doing. He asked her not to leave him alone. Cassius noticed a black cloak hanging on a stool. Cassian decides to run away from the living room because he finds it all very suspicious. Rosetta notices his silhouette in the window. He is trying so hard to escape from this place. When she said she would come the next day, she already knew that the guy would try to escape. He made Rosetta look very suspicious, so she's not surprised that after all this, Cassian wants to escape at all costs. She knew this, so she decided to leave a black cloak on purpose so that he could hide his identity on the street. He wants to play hide-and-seek, and Rosetta agrees to play even though she's not in the mood for it. As he runs, he remembers everything Rosetta said. He assures her that she did save him, but he thinks it was stupid. He doesn't understand what she wants to do next. Because of his trust in people, he regretted it many times. A maid he trusted poisoned his tea. A caring butler tried to throw him down the stairs, and even his own father abandoned him. He believes that Rosetta will also use him and knock him out, and he is very tired of it. Leo and his stepmother have managed to abuse the poor boy, so he doesn't want to be so weak that he gets torn to pieces. In fact, he is grateful to her for saving him, and when he returns, he will repay her. But he stops because he realizes that his home looks like hell. He has no other place to return to. The feeling that he is a whipped child tears him apart. 2 village men notice him. One of them asks who he is and notes that he hasn't seen him before. The man turned out to be drunk. He asks to see the boy's face, but the boy turns away because his appearance might give away his royal blood. The man grabs him by the shoulder, so he turns around. The stranger starts shouting that he is not answering questions. He tells the 2 men that he did not answer because he had urgent business and asks the man to let him go. The drunkard notices that he speaks like an aristocrat. They begin to mock Cassian and ask him what the aristocrat is doing in this alley. They say that there is one rule here. If a guy wants to have fun, he has to pay poor people like them. While one of the men grabbed him by the hood, the boy responded by squeezing his arm hard. The guy feels that even with his condition, he can cope with 2 men. The second man attacked the boy with his fists, but he threw him away so hard that the man flew away. Cassian feels that he should leave sooner rather than later. Other villagers heard the sounds coming from the fight, so when the man said that he needed to be captured, they ran after him. Cassian was able to hide. He hears the men complaining, but he is quickly found by the first people he meets. They threaten that now he will have to spend the night here. Cassian accepts the fact that they will beat him to death, but he must not show his face in any way. The man reached for his hood, but all this action is disrupted by the words of Rosetta, who is standing on the roof of the house. She asks him if he ran away because he had to endure the threats of these idiots. Cassian noticed the girl's beauty. He sees that even in the darkness she has a snow-white face with golden eyes that sparkle. The girl asks him again if he will read her help now. He realizes that her beautiful face and voice seem to enchant and captivate him, like a monster from fairy tales. Voga repeats whether he wants her to help him. The men notice that she is a woman, so they call her to come down and have fun with them. They are not satisfied with the fact that both aristocrats do not notice them. The drunkard is angry and threatens the boy that the girl will come downstairs when she sees his face beaten to a pulp. Other men are already warming up and preparing for the fight. The girl is interested in the fact that he continues to stand there and just waits for a blow. She realizes she has lost, so she goes down to him and says she will help. She tells him to watch carefully and remember everything clearly. She took out a fan and is getting ready to show her magic powers. She opens her fan. The men wonder how she was able to get down from the roof. They say that she wants to say that she is a magician. She looks intently at one of the men. His face turned red. She wants to seduce him. But then she punched him in the face. The men around her were shocked by her actions. The man is lying on the ground in pain. The girl is not used to fighting in this body. When she used her power in her second life, she was a half-man, half-god. The ability to use the internal energy in the body of a skillful body and the body of a weak girl are different things. The men were outraged by the girl's behavior, so they attacked her with their fists, and one even used a stick. She swings and hits the man in the neck. Turning around, she saw another shocked man and punched him in the stomach. The second villager came running over, and she threw it at the other one. The aura of the cruel young lady drove the men crazy. They were angry at the girl's impudence, so they attacked her and a fight broke out. When the fight was over, the girl stood calmly as if nothing had happened, while the other men lay beaten and exhausted. Cassian asked Rosetta who she was. She says she is Rosetta Valentine and says she doesn't want to repeat her name anymore. He is very embarrassed by the strength of the girl, whom he did not imagine. He tells her that if he had known how strong she was, he would have asked for help right away. Rosetta asks him to clarify his words. He says that everything is as he said. The girl said that now she understood why he didn't ask for help right away. He thought she was weak and was afraid that she would be hurt. Cassian notes that if you can get away with one victim, then there is nothing reasonable about involving another person in this action. The girl is surprised by his words. She cannot believe that such a guy can be considered a thief. He found her suspicious, so he ran away. But then I wanted to hide, having no strength. Even in this state, he did not say anything, so as not to endanger the girl. She thinks it's funny, but the guy is too caring. In the book, Cassian used Alicia to take revenge on Leo. He was an unfortunate thief who was eventually able to bring Alicia to pity. But he could not harm Leo, and as a result, he was killed twice by Rosetta's relatives. Rosetta picked up the stick that one of the local men had used to swing at her earlier. Cassian asked what she was going to do. She pointed with a stick to the place where she found a more serious wound. He asked her excitedly what she was up to. She explained that this would not be tolerated any longer, as she had given him time to decide, but he just ran away. She noted that he would have to choose now. Either he goes with her, or he dies. He feels backed into a corner. Cassian asks her if she is going to kill him. She replies that she cannot let go of someone who knows about her target, but she will not kill him personally. She just needs to bring him back to health and leave him where she found him, so the culprits will come and sort it out themselves. Cassian is sure that if he were alive, they would have really killed him. It would have been a perfect chance, not even comparable to the incident on the stairs. But he realized that Rosetta knew something, so he asked her how she knew it was an accident. All this time, when he was talking to the girl, he never mentioned the name of Duchess Leona. But she says everything with such certainty about the culprit in the incident, so he wonders how she knew all this. Rosetta says that it doesn't matter, but in response, he points out that it does matter. Rosetta asks if this value is so important that it can somehow influence Cassius. He says it is very important. Rosetta has no choice, so she knew that he would ask her everything. She had an excuse prepared in advance. The excuse was this. When Rosetta saw the coachman running away from the scene, she realized that it was not just an accident. And then she noticed Cassius lying on the ground. At first, she wanted to go over it, leaving everything as it should be, so as not to get involved in the other family's business and not to put herself in danger. But she is an illegitimate child and has always been a stranger to her family. And she thought that Cassian would be able to understand the girl's feelings, since they both had similar situations. That's why she wanted him to stay alive. This is something that the girl made up to justify herself at the right moment, and which could explain her guess that it could not have been an accident. And the reason why she asked Leo to fulfill her wish. But instantly, she realizes that there is no point in it. Why did she have to invent lies to justify herself? As she looked Cassian in the eye, she stopped liking the idea, so she doesn't want to lie. If he refused her offer, she was ready to leave him. She realizes that it would be better to tell the truth, because it was her suggestion that he refused, so as not to put himself in danger. Rosetta decides to speak up. She warns him to promise that he will believe her even if it is difficult to do so. He feels that there is no time to think about it for a long time. He is on the verge of closing his eyes, and he feels that they will close soon. Even at the moment when death was close, he did not want to feel someone else's hands on his own neck. He says he will believe her. He just wants to hear the reason. Therefore, if you take her side, it should be of your own free will. Rosetta says that her nanny beat her and her sister for a very long time. And one day she found out something. She learned that in the near future, her dear sister Alicia would become very unhappy with his brother Leo, and that Cassian and her would die like miserable dogs. There was a short silence between them. He tells her that he does not understand what she is talking about. Her words seem very groundless to him. Rosetta realizes that there was a high probability that he would not believe these words. But it was better to tell her the truth than to give her hope and then stab her in the back. Rosetta heard the boy sobbing. He began to cry bitterly. She asks him why he started crying. He says he is sad that he will eventually die. He knows that these words are hard to believe and have no evidence, but in spite of everything, the words stand out very clearly. To die like a miserable dog. He thinks that this sad expression suits him very well. He asks her if she knew that an incident was going to happen to him. She replied that she knew, and that's why she came to his aid. She wanted to save him and offer to change their fate together. But she did not know that he would not be able to remember the person who saved him. He thinks that if all these words are true, he will be able to understand the course of the next events. She tells him that she has said everything she can. She asks him what he will decide. He hesitates and does not know what to do at this point. Cassian recalls all the girl's words and her background. He is silent. She says that she is Rosetta Valentine, and she swears that she will do everything she can to help Cassian until he takes her side. She will not abandon him and will help him survive and become happy. And if she breaks their oath, she will die the most horrible death, and no one will ever remember anything about her. The boy notes that the oath sounds very cruel, but Rosetta says that the more cruel it is, the greater the chance that the oath will be fulfilled. He says he will believe her words and take her side. Cassian says that he does not know how she will make him a duke, but he asks her to do it and save him, because he is going to die anyway, and he wants to change at least something. He leaned on Rosetta and passed out. The girl recalls that his heart just stopped, just as it was said in the novel. He fell asleep while looking at the red sunset. The cool night air blew over him, and his eyes closed on their own. His clothes were covered in blood, and his body temperature was rapidly dropping. He began to moan in agony, and the light disappeared from his eyes. That's how Cassius's heart stopped. Rosetta reassures herself because she knows that Cassius's heart will beat again. The source of mana is in the heart. Magicians use it for spells, which comes from the heart, and their capabilities are calculated by the strength of their mana usage and the degree of proximity to it. Therefore, a magician needs to have two abilities, acquired and innate skills. Cassius didn't have the power to use mana. He felt it, but it did not spread through his body, and he could not use it. Since he had no innate skills, it was not expected that he would be able to become a magician from the very beginning. But this was only half true, because he had mana in his heart. Cassius's heart stopped, but soon it will beat again and he will wake up. Instead of blood, mana would flow into his heart, a kind of defense reaction. To save the dying organism, the heart will start supplying mana to the organs instead of blood. Cassian did not even suspect, and no one knew, that he could manifest his mana at the level of a genius. As soon as the faint mana begins to spread through his body, his abilities will begin to manifest, and he will now understand exactly how this unusual feeling feels after being abandoned by everyone. He became the one who could use magic. According to the novel, Cassian will soon open his eyes and be able to awaken his abilities. The mana in his body is still very unstable, so it will be very difficult for him to become a great magician. But she can solve this problem. Cassia just needs to open her eyes. It sounds strange to Rosetta, but she wasn't sure he would open his eyes. Although it was in the novel, what would happen if he died in front of her? She recalls his request that she save him. She decides to perform CPR, which she was taught to do in high school. She leans over to him and tries to perform CPR. At this time, Cassian wakes up and blushes. Already in the Reddington living room, Madame Blanca was able to meet them outside and help them carry Cassius. She notes that they can leave the hotel in different states, but looking at their position when the person is bleeding, it will be a difficult task to let them go without questions. Rosetta agrees and says that without Blanca, she would have been in big trouble. It was as if she had been following her even before. Her appearance at the hotel right after Rosetta arrived was very unexpected. When Rosetta was carrying the unconscious Cassius, they were met by Blanca, who called out to them. Rosetta did not recognize the woman at first. She asks Madame if she has been following them, but she replies that she has not. Rosetta did not feel any presence then. She calls out to the woman, who says that she wants to order something again. Rosetta is served blue tea. The form states that after 3 orders, a person will be granted the status of a regular customer. And she notes that in such a short time, Rosetta has become her regular client. Rosetta asks if she should act more confidently in such cases. Blanca asks what else Rosetta wants to surprise her with. Rosetta assures her that she will make sure that Madame will not be sad for the rest of her life. Rosetta continues that now a woman will not need to look for adventures because the girl will provide them for her. Blanca says that from the outside it looks like a proposal. Rosetta replies that she had to buy a ring for a woman. She continues that she will leave it for next time, and she will buy a diamond ring and put it on her ring finger. The woman notes that this all sounds like a lot of fun, but the ring finger already has a master. Rosetta asks if the woman is married. Blanca says she is already married, although her partner died and the marriage ended. She adds that they didn't like each other anyway. Blanca says that she is most concerned about what Rosetta has in mind, and she is simply bursting with interest. Rosetta asks the woman to tell only the truth and asks her if she knows the boy lying on the bed. The woman says she knows him, but she hasn't checked his information. She just knows his face, so she knows his personality. Rosetta tells the woman that she wants to make a duke out of the boy, so she wants the woman to help her with this. Blanca says that Rosetta wants to make a duke out of the boy and overthrow Leo. The woman notes that there is too much work for one task and asks Rosetta if she thinks so. Rosetta says yes, but the payment will be appropriate. Although Rosetta was an illegitimate daughter, apart from her troubles with her relatives, she was treated in exactly the same way as Alicia. Her desk drawers were full of jewelry, and she was well provided for. Rosetta says she has money. The woman says that she understands everything, and you can tell from Rosetta that she is a rich lady. The woman says that apart from the request to turn the boy into a duke, there are many other tasks, and it will be very difficult to evaluate them as separate and difficult to pay for them. The woman guesses and asks Rosetta if she wants to rent her to turn her boyfriend into a duke. The girl says that one might think that she wants to limit her freedom, but she just wants it to be a cooperation to achieve a common goal, and that is the offer she wanted to make to the woman. She adds that she can continue to receive orders. In response, the woman makes strange sounds that sound like laughter. She says that the price will be very high and asks Rosetta if she really agrees to it. Rosetta says that she will make an upfront payment to start with and asks the woman if she can pay later. The woman says that Rosetta said she had a lot of money. In response, the girl notes that there are not as many of them as Blanca thinks. She adds that if everything works out, they can take money from Cassius. In response, the woman laughed very loudly.